In the world of high ticket sales, everyone thinks that it's this huge skill that you just learn. Well, what if I told you it's not that at all? It's actually all about your internal operating system. Most sales reps think that they need better scripts, but the very top closers do not rely on tactics at all. They lean into their identity, their energy, and their internal alignment. Today in this video, I want to go ahead and break down 5 internal systems that make those top closers elite. And honestly, why most salespeople will never meet their potential until they fix what's happening internally, not externally. And at the end, I'm going to show you the actual internal model that the top 1% run on that 99% of people will never even learn. You see, I've coached entrepreneurs doing multiple 6 figures a month. I've helped rebuild businesses with owners that were ready to shut everything down. And I've also worked with elite athletes to help push them to their greatest potential. And all of those experiences are what have allowed me to go on to collect hundreds of thousands of dollars for myself and my clients, as well as help burnt out closers regain their internal clarity, confidence, and conviction in themselves and their performance. So let's get one thing clear. My background is in performance psychology. I spent over a decade studying how elite performers think, operate, and lead. And here's the fundamental truth, which is that true sales is not about persuasion. What matters more than that is alignment. So let's get into that first internal system that encompasses everything else, which is your identity. See, when it comes to identity, that identity is what's going to push your brain towards seeking certain sets of information. That's what creates your perspective, which is what dictates your energy, your tone, your presence, the frame that you're able to hold in building authority and connection with a client. The closers that are operating on a high level don't just act confident. That confidence comes from within themselves, in the identity of being a clear, connected, convicted person, meaning that they are understanding of their offer. Why are they on that specific offer? Why does it align with them? And how does it directly help the client? Why does someone need this? That is where the confidence comes from. People are able to get a feel for who you are before you even really say anything meaningful or before they really hear anything about you or the product. So what identity does, it helps dictate a level of certainty. And that's through the boundaries that you set on a call, the authority that, like I said, again, that you hold, and how you just carry yourself overall, how you're able to interact with someone. Because I'm sure you felt it. If you're actively selling, I'm sure you felt that when your identity is misaligned, that you feel like, is this really the best offer for me? Is this really something that they need? Everything becomes forced. You become tied to the outcome of the sale. You become misaligned, and that's where you burn out. And if there's one thing to remember, it's this, is you cannot outperform the identity that you're currently living in. So if you're aiming to reach new heights, then you need to go through a rewiring of your internal systems to improve and iterate that identity. And so going on to system number 2, what this is your emotional regulation, really your nervous system. When it comes to presenting yourself in the ways that I just described with conviction, clear energy, all these things, you're not able to do that if you are running on a dysregulated nervous system, because that is what's actually speaking before you utter a word. If you're burnt out, if you're unclear, if all this energy is just stuck with nowhere to go, all of that heaviness is going to come through in your tone, your presence, your energy. It'll affect your timing on knowing where to take a certain conversation or how to lead in the right way. Now, to bring in some science here for a second, the reason why I know that this is true is because of our body's response to stress, our body's response to holding in all of this energy. Well, what happens? It releases cortisol. When cortisol goes up in the brain and the body, it leads to an increased muscle tension throughout the body. And that tension is what feels like that heaviness. That's what's going to get you a little bit jittery, a little bit antsy. Your tone is going to elevate. You're going to get a little bit too excited. You're going to get a little bit too needy. And see, that's what happens. And when you can't be in control of that, when you can't regulate your nervous system and therefore your emotions, your tone and energy, everything goes haywire. And that's what the elite closers understand, is not only how to regulate their emotions, their nervous system going into a call, but how do you regulate it on the spot while you're in the call under pressure? And if you want to know a lot more on this topic, make sure to check the link in the video where I go into a deeper description on the 4 quadrants of energy and how you can take more control over that. Because really, the idea of closing, it's a level of emotional leadership, being able to take someone on a journey through a buying decision. And you can't do any of that when you're dysregulated internally. So moving on to number 3, the system to understand is your cognitive clarity. It's the mental space of being a high performer. And this, of course, is both affected by and affects directly the other 2 systems. But being able to understand what goes on within your own mind, all of the open loops that you have that might be leading you to lose a little bit of presence, the decisions that you had to make earlier in the day that hadn't been made, and therefore you're holding on to that information. In my other video, I talk about the Zeigarnik effect and how the brain is wired to hang on to unfinished business, and it weighs you down. Clarity, having nothing muddying the waters there in your mind. Clarity is the foundation of certainty. And your ability to think clearly and know what needs to be said at what time, how to convey yourself in a certain way. All right? And this goes beyond just words, which I'll touch on in a second. The top performers are able to create that clear mental space before they go to sell so that they can authentically connect and present themselves in a way that is most effective. Because chances are you don't need more sales scripts or tactics. You just need more bandwidth to operate authentically as yourself and in service of others. And that's the problem with 99% of sales coaches out there is they teach you words, scripts, objection handling, when that makes up at most 10% of our communication. The other 90% of communication is what I'm talking about here. It's your tone, it's your energy, it's your conviction, it's your willingness to want to connect with someone and show them your authentic self. That is what's going to close deals, is building that trust through just being who you are and knowing authentically that the reason why you're sitting in front of this person is to give them the best, most important service that they could possibly have. And did you see what just happened there? This is what leads into the 4th section or framework of all of this, which is your physical energy, your physical presence. The state in which you're able to operate in is what dictates your performance. Your tone, your presence, your posture, all of these micro expressions that you don't even realize you're doing come from your physical state. So that nervous system that's running in the background, if you don't get a hold of it, you're fucked, because that is what determines how you sound. Can you recall a time where you just started rambling a little too long and you forgot to take a breath and calm yourself and give space to someone to respond and kind of reflect back and be like, oh shit, what just happened in those past 3 minutes? Why didn't I stop talking? Well, if you can't even be in control of your own movements, your breathing, your ability to respond, then how can you possibly control the conversation in the way that you want it to? Because at the end of the day, your physical readiness, your ability to have that control over yourself, that is what influences your certainty. And that's exactly what behavioral activation is that you'll see in that other video, which is the idea that if you're stressed, if there's a high level of stress in your body, the only way to activate the body's response to basically burn off that cortisol and reduce its tension, reduce its stress, is to move and act, right? That might come through sitting still and breathing, or through actually physically exercising. That's why it's not the worst idea between sales calls to pump out 100 push-ups or do a few jumping jacks. Just get that blood flowing, because that directly affects your clarity, the amount of oxygen that you can cycle, ATP. So if you can't understand how to trigger the parasympathetic nervous system in times where that sympathetic is just kind of pumping, you're going to stay high stress. You're going to stay too tense. You're not going to be able to present yourself. And this streak goes both ways, but more often than not, your physiology, it actually becomes your psychology in a conversation. Your body's telling you you're stretched, which means your mind thinks there's a reason to be stressed, and everything falls apart. And this 5th and final part is where everything comes together. And this is when you're able to sell effortlessly and authentically, which is through alignment. That's an internal and external alignment. This alignment it's your identity, it's your emotional energy, cognitive clarity, and your physical state, all pointing narrowly in a single direction. And you can imagine when all of those things are aligned, sales doesn't really become sales anymore. It just becomes an effortless matter of putting yourself out there and helping the person in front of you and having the confidence that they're going to buy this. They need this. So let me just put my best foot forward, act as the highest version of myself, and the outcome will follow. With that mentality, you're able to start leading the frame in a better way. You're able to really guide the prospect from a real grounded position rather than a needy one or persuasive or schemy, sleazy one. And knowing that you're in that position, that's what's going to give you all the certainty in the world. And with that certainty is the best of all, which is flow. You are just flowing effortlessly. Energy is seeping out of you, and you can't even help it. And flow is the byproduct of that internal clarity. So really, you can look at high ticket sales in this way, which is all it equals is clarity, internally and externally, which then helps you find alignment. With that alignment, you become a better leader. Your leadership improves. That leadership turns into trust, and then trust ends up being that final push towards making a decision, a purchasing decision. And this is what I teach every one of my sales professionals on. Even people that are sales adjacent, business owners, real estate professionals, it doesn't just come down to tactics. It's about true internal performance. And so right here, as I promised, this is the internal operating model that the top 1% use every single day. They all start with identity. From their identity, they master emotional regulation. Through that, they're able to control and improve their cognitive clarity, which then goes on to affect their physical state and ability to perform. And that's what goes on to confirm their alignment. All of this is what goes into my iOS loop. Your identity dictates your energy. Your energy dictates your behavior. Your behavior dictates your outcomes. And it cycles back again. Those outcomes reinforce certain identities or encourage better, newer identities. And the loop continues. The identities improve your energy, which improve your behavior, which improve your outcomes, so on and so forth. Behavior isn't what actually leads in this situation. It's actually the identity. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, you're not going to fake it until you make it and just become a great sales rep. You actually need to be that great sales rep and act in alignment and in accordance with what it is that that person does. And embodying that identity allows you to then take the actions and make the behaviors in the direction of becoming truly that person. And then maybe you get to the end of the road and you realize, wow, there's a whole mountain ahead of me. Let me identify what it is that the person at the top of that mountain does in order to be at the top of that mountain. And let me start doing it now. And let me be that person in the present, because I can't exist in the past or future. So I can't be then or now or in the future. I can only be now. So therefore, let me take those actions based on the energy that I embody through that identity of being at the top of the mountain. And the outcomes will follow. So if any of that clicked for you and you want to know more, and you're a sales professional that knows you're capable of more, but you're tired of the pushing, the misalignment, the forcing, the overthinking, then you probably don't need more tactics. You need a better internal operating system. And inside of my coaching program, the Clarity Code, I'm building out an entire track called Clarity Closers, where I'm helping sales professionals upgrade their identity, regulate their energy, find internal cognitive clarity to help them perform at the highest of levels that they didn't even know that they were capable of. If you want to understand how all this might work for you, go ahead and fill out the form in the description, and we'll go ahead and jump on a call and see if we're a right fit for each other. So if you found this video valuable, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button, give the video a like, and if you want to learn more about those energy quadrants that I mentioned earlier, you can go ahead and give it a watch right over here, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace.